First story, The Shadows Beneath Willow Creek. It was a quiet summer evening when I moved into my new home in Willow Creek, a small town in Oregon, nestled between dense forests and rolling hills. The house was an old Victorian style with creaky wooden floors and a basement door that seemed to call to me from the moment I arrived. The locals warned me about the house, but I thought their stories were just small-town superstitions. The first few days were uneventful. I spent my time unpacking and exploring the town, but couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that lingered in the air. It was the fourth night when I finally heard it. A low, scraping noise coming from the basement. Curiosity got the better of me. I grabbed a flashlight and descended the rickety stairs. The air grew colder with each step, and the light from my flashlight flickered like it was struggling against an unseen force. At the bottom, the room was bare, except for a small dusty box sitting in the center. I approached it slowly, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. When I opened the box, I found a series of Polaroid pictures. They were all of different people, standing in the basement with expressions of pure terror. The last photo was blank, but as I stared at it, an image began to form. It was me, standing exactly where I was in that moment. I spun around, my flashlight now failing. In the darkness, I could hear whispers growing louder, speaking my name. Suddenly, the basement door slammed shut, and I felt a cold hand grip my shoulder. I screamed and tried to run, but my feet were rooted to the spot. The last thing I saw before everything went black was my own face in the reflection of a broken mirror on the wall, but it was smiling back at me. And then there was silence. To this day, no one has been able to explain what happened in that house. The locals say it claims a new victim every few years. And now, if you listen closely on quiet nights, you can hear whispers coming from beneath Willow Creek. Second story, Shadows of Blackwood Cellar. It was a stormy evening when I arrived in Blackwood, a tiny town nestled deep in the forests of Vermont. The rain pounded against the windows of my car as I pulled into the driveway of the house I had inherited from my uncle, a man I barely knew. The house was old, its wooden facade weathered by time and neglect. But it was the cellar door that drew my attention almost immediately. It was padlocked from the outside, a thick chain wrapped around it. The key had been left on the kitchen counter, along with a note that read, "Do not open the cellar after sunset." I laughed at the warning, assuming it to be one of my uncle's eccentricities. Curiosity, however, got the better of me. I waited until nightfall to explore the cellar, despite the note's ominous advice. The padlock was rusty, and it took me several minutes to pry it open. As I descended the creaking wooden stairs, the air grew colder and damp. The flickering light from my flashlight illuminated rows of old jars filled with unidentifiable substances lining the shelves. At the far end of the cellar, I noticed a wooden box covered in dust. When I opened it, I found a stack of letters dated from the 1800s. They spoke of a man named Joseph Blackwood and his obsession with the occult. The letters detailed rituals and experiments conducted to bind a shadow to this earth. I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized the ritual had been performed right there in that cellar. Suddenly, the light bulb above me flickered and went out. I froze as a soft whispering sound filled the room. It was low at first, but soon grew louder, a chorus of voices all speaking at once. I swung my flashlight around, and that's when I saw it. A shadow stood in the corner, darker than the surrounding darkness. It had no features, but its presence was overwhelming. It started to move towards me, its form rippling like smoke. Panicked, I scrambled up the stairs and slammed the cellar door shut. The whispering stopped, but I could hear scratching on the other side of the door. It continued all night, growing louder with each passing hour. The next morning, I packed my things and left Blackwood for good. But sometimes, late at night, I still hear that scratching in my dreams. And I know deep down that whatever I let out of that cellar is still waiting. Third story, The Whispers Beneath Cedar Creek. It was late October when I returned to Cedar Creek, a tiny village nestled deep in the forests of Vermont. I hadn't been there since childhood, but the memories of its narrow streets and old houses clung to me like the mist that never seemed to leave the valley. My grandmother had recently passed away, and I was tasked with sorting through her belongings in the house that had been in our family for generations. The house was a 2-story Victorian with peeling paint and a yard overgrown with weeds. But it was the basement that haunted my memories the most. Grandma had always warned me never to go down there. Some doors are meant to stay closed, she would say, her voice shaking slightly. That night, the power went out just as I was finishing packing the last of her things. I lit a candle and decided to explore the house one last time before leaving the next day. The flickering light cast shadows that seemed to move on their own. As I passed by the basement door, I felt an unexplainable urge to go inside. It was as if something was calling to me. The door creaked open on its own as I touched it. The staircase leading down was steep and narrow, and the air grew colder with each step. The smell of damp earth and rotting wood filled my nostrils. At the bottom of the stairs was a room I didn't remember ever seeing. The walls were lined with ancient shelves filled with books and odd trinkets. In the center was a large wooden chest covered in a layer of dust. My heart pounded as I approached it. The moment I opened the chest, the candle went out. Complete darkness surrounded me, but I could hear something. Whispers, faint at first, but growing louder with each passing second. I froze in place, unable to move. The whispers spoke my name. Eleanor, Eleanor, come closer. I felt a cold hand on my shoulder and screamed, dropping the chest lid shut. The whispers turned into a low, guttural growl. I scrambled up the stairs and slammed the basement door behind me. The house was silent again, but the cold handprint on my shoulder remained. I didn't wait until morning. Grabbed my keys and drove away from Cedar Creek as fast as I could. To this day, I don't know what I released from that chest, but I can still hear the whispers when I close my eyes. Some doors are meant to stay closed.